There is a law of abundance that prosperous men use every night of their lives, and almost none of them will ever speak of it aloud. Not because they have sworn an oath to keep it secret, but because the crowd would laugh at it if they did. For this law costs nothing. It demands no struggle, no early rising, no grinding labor that other men can see and admire and respect a man for. It asks only that you use the hours you are already spending every single night, asleep. And because it is free, and because it asks for no visible sweat, the crowd dismisses it out of hand and goes on believing as the crowd has always believed. That wealth must be wrung from a stingy world by force. So the law stays quiet, used by the few who know it, ignored by the many who would rather be told that process is hard, because a hard thing flatters a man's pride more than a free one ever could. I'm going to give it to you tonight. And here is the very heart of it. The one thing I want you to carry past the threshold of sleep above all the rest. Prosperity is not a thing you must build from nothing by the labor of your hand. It is a current already flowing, already moving through the world and through your life this very moment. The way a great river moves, whether or not any single man upon its banks understands where its water comes from or where it goes, you do not have to create the current. You could not if you tried. It was always there before you were born, and it will be thereafter flowing endlessly. And the whole question of a man's prosperity, the entire question, the only one that matters, is not whether the current exists, for it always has, but whether he lets it flow to him, or whether he has dammed it, without ever once knowing that his own hand was hand upon the stones. And I tell you plainly, before this hour goes 1 minute further, you have been damming it every night without knowing. So tonight you stop. Tonight you begin stone by stone in no hurry to take down the dam, and you let the current that was always flowing begin at last to carry you while you sleep. Understand plainly what this night is for, and do not mistake it for what it is not. You are not here to rest from the work of building wealth. The night is not your time from that work. The night is the work, the deepest and the truest part of it, the part the laboring crowd never learns. So dim your light now, lie still, let these words pass through you without resistance. The way water passes through an open hand, taking nothing, fighting nothing, and come back night after night after night. For the repetition is the whole of it, and the repetition is the 3 hours, and the 3 hours are how a life is quietly remade in the dark. Part 1. The current was always flowing. Let me give you first the great claim that everything else in this hour rests upon. For if you take hold of this one thing and let it down into you, all the rest will follow of its own weight. Open quote. Real quick. I just want to speak from the heart for a second. Thank you. I mean it. You showing up here over and over is the reason I get to do what I love. And I never want that to become something I take for granted. Whether life is treating you kindly right now or you're going through one of the harder chapters, I'm just really glad you're here with me. We found each other for a reason. And I don't say that lightly. By the way, if that free sheet's still sitting there undownloaded, grab it now. I made it because I think it can genuinely help you. No rush. Mostly, I just want to say I'm grateful you're here. Close quote. The way the loaded cart follows the horse once the horse has decided to move. Abundance is a natural law. Hear that and weigh it. It is not a favor handed down from above to the lucky few, and it is not a prize awarded by some stern judge to the lucky few, and it is not a prize awarded by some stern judge to the men who have earned the right to it. It is a current, a movement built into the very nature of things, as fixed and as faithful as the law that runs water downhill, that turns seed into harvest, that wheels the seasons one into the next without any man to push them along. The world is not at its root a place of scarcity, into which a handful of fortunate men have somehow managed to import a little wealth against the general drought. That is the picture the poor man carries, and it is false to the bone. The world is a place of moving abundance, a current flowing endlessly in every direction through every life. And you live inside that current, whether you have ever once in your days noticed it or not. So understand what this means about the prosperous man. For it is not at all what you have believed. The prosperous man has not performed some miracle of importing water into a desert by the strength of his arm. He has done something far simpler and far quieter than that. He has merely let the current that was always there flow to him instead of damming it away. And understand too, and this is the part that overturns the whole of your thinking. So let it land. The poor man is not standing in a place where there is no water. He is not the victim of a drought. He is standing in a dry bed below a dam, and the dam was built by his own hands. And the water, he is certain, does not exist for a man like him, stands piled high and waiting just upstream of the wall he himself raised. This is the very thing the scarcity-minded man can never quite bring himself to believe. And his disbelief is itself the chief stone that holds the whole dam fast in its place. He looks about him at the plain facts of his life, the empty account, the bill he cannot pay, the long gray years of without. And from these facts, he draws the only conclusion that seems reasonable to a man standing in a dry bed, that there is simply no water for one such as him. The river runs to other men, to luckier men, to men born nearer its banks. It was never meant to reach him, and it never will. And so, standing there in the dry bed, perfectly certain of the drought, he never once thinks to turn and look upstream, where the very water he has sworn does not exist, stands gathered and pressing against a high wall of his own fearful thought, kept from him by the single thing in all the world that could ever have kept it from him, his own settled conviction that it would not come. For hear how the dam is built, and by what hands, and in what hours. The deep mind, fed a steady, faithful diet of scarcity by nightly repetition, builds that wall a little higher and a little stronger with every night that passes. Every single night, the drifting man lies awake in the dark and counts his lack, going over the shortage once more, rehearsing the old worry, tallying yet again all the money he does not have and all the doors that have shut in his face. He is not merely suffering through another bad and sleepless hour, though he believes that is all he is doing. He is carrying stones. He is handing his deep mind in the most receptive and unguarded hour it knows in all the day, a long and detailed and feelingful instruction in the doctrine of scarcity. And the deep mind, being faithful and being utterly blind, takes that instruction exactly as given and lays another course of stones across the river. And the wall rises by that much, and the bed below it grows by that much drier. And in the gray of the morning, the man wakes once more, certain all over again that there is no water for him, never once suspecting, never in his whole life suspecting, that he spent the dark hours of the night with his own two hands building higher the very wall that holds the water back. So tonight, we begin the only work that finally matters. Tonight, you take down the first stone. And hear me, you do not have to tear the whole dam down in a single night. You could not, and you are not asked to. And the man who demands of himself that the whole wall fall at once only exhausts himself and quits. You have only to do two things tonight. Stop adding to it and take down the first stone, and then come back tomorrow night, rested, and take down another and another the night after that. The wall went up one stone at a time across the years, and it comes down one stone at a time, and that is enough. For the current needs only the first small gap to begin its work. Say within yourself now slowly with me, abundance is a current that was always flowing, and I live inside it, whether I have known it or not. I am not standing where there is no water. I am standing below a dam I built myself with my own fearful thought, stone by stone, night after night. Tonight I stop building it. Night after night. Tonight I stop building it. Tonight I take down the first stone, and the current that was always flowing begins at last to move toward me. Let that pass down into you. Do not argue with it tonight. There are many nights ahead in which to take down all the rest. Part 2. How you dam the current without knowing. I have told you that you built the dam yourself, and I know that is a hard saying to receive lying there in the dark. So let me show you now exactly how it was done. For a man cannot undo what he does not understand, and I would not leave you with the blame and not the mechanism. And understand from the first, there is no real blame in it. You were never taught to see the thing I am about to show you. No one showed you. You did it the way a man does anything he was never warned against, innocently, faithfully, and to his own great cost. Every night of rehearsed worry was an instruction. Hold that sentence and turn it slowly over, for it is the hinge of the whole matter. When you lay there in the dark and went over your lack, when you replayed the loss for the 100th time, when you let the cold fear of want run its full course through your mind again and again, until at last you dropped into a thin and troubled sleep. You were not simply feeling bad, as you have always supposed. You were teaching. You were handing your deep mind a lesson, and not a faint one, but a lesson repeated over and over and soaked through with the feeling of real and present dread. And the deep mind learns its lessons faithfully, more faithfully than any pupil that ever lived, and with no judgment whatsoever about what it is being taught. It does not pause to weigh whether the lesson is good for you. It does not ask whether you would choose this teaching if you understood where it led. It simply takes whatever is repeated to it with feeling in the receptive hour, and it goes silently to work to build your outer life into the exact shape of the inner lesson. So consider what you have been teaching it. You taught it scarcity night after night, year upon year, with all the conviction of a man wholly certain of his own poverty. And the deep mind, the faithful blind servant, built you a scarce life precisely as instructed, down to the smallest particular, and handed that scarce life back to you each and every morning. And you looked at what it handed you, and you called it reality, and you grieved over it as though it were a thing done to you by the world. And then you lay down again, that very night, and taught it the self-same lesson once more. And so the wheel turned year after year, and your own hand was the hand that turned it. And here is the place where the man who fears money does himself the very deepest harm of all, for his case is crueler and more tangled than the simple worrier's. And I must name it plainly, because so many men are caught in it and cannot see the trap. The man who fears money and fears risk, who flinches inwardly from wealth even in the same breath that he longs aloud for it, who carries down in him some old buried conviction that money is dangerous or corrupting or simply not safe in the hands of a man like himself, that man has taught his deep mind to refuse the very current he asks for. Do you see the bind of it? With his mouth in the daylight, he asks for abundance sincerely, achingly, but underneath in the dark, with the far stronger language of fear, he instructs the deep mind to keep abundance well away from him, because some deep part of him has learned to regard it as a threat to be feared rather than a good to be welcomed. And the deep mind, hearing always the deeper and the more emotional of two instructions rather than the merely spoken one, obeys the fear and not the wish. It keeps the current dammed, and the poor man stands forever baffled, unable to understand why, for all his sincere and aching wanting, the water never comes to him. It never comes because he asked for it with his lips while building the dam higher with his fear. And the dam always wins over the wish. For the dam is built of what he most deeply and most truly believes. And the wish is only words upon the surface. But now hear the thing that frees you from the whole of it, the one truth to hold above every other on this night. Scarcity thought is a habit. It is not a truth about the world. Say it to yourself. It is a habit, and nothing grander or more permanent than that. It was planted in you by repetition, by the discouraged words of the people who raised you, and who had themselves been taught scarcity by their own people before them. By every small defeat you allowed to harden slowly into a settled verdict about your life, by the long and entirely unnoticed years of rehearsing lack, until lack became the only thing your mind any longer knew how to expect of the future. It feels like truth to you. I know it does. It feels like the plainest truth there is, but it feels that way only because it has been repeated so many thousands of times, and a thing repeated often enough will always, without fail, begin at last to feel like truth. But it is not truth. It is a groove worn deep into the mind by repetition, The way a wheel wears a rut into a soft road by passing over the same line 10,000 times. And what repetition wore in, repetition can wear away. There is no rut so deep that it cannot be filled in and a new path worn beside it. That is your whole hope, and it is a sure one. Let me tell you of a man who proved this very thing with the simplest act a man can perform. And I will tell you about him before I tell you what at last became of him. He was a man sunk deep in debt, the ordinary grinding year after year kind of debt that follows a man like a shadow and never once lets him lift his head and breathe. He earned his wage, and the money came in, and the money went straight back out again. And at the close of every single month, he stood exactly where he had stood at its beginning, no further ahead and often enough a little further behind. And across the long years of this, he had come to believe deep down, where a man's truest beliefs live, that this was simply the shape of things for him now and forever. That abundance was a thing other men gathered and held, and that he never would, because he was not the sort of man to whom money stayed. Now, mark this, for it is the whole point of his story. He did not need, as it turned out, to earn a great deal more than he was earning. That is not how he escaped. What he needed was to stop the leak and to prove one single thing to his own deep mind. So he formed one small, dull, unglamorous, entirely unimpressive habit. He began to save a part of every dollar that passed through his hands. At the first, it was almost nothing, an amount so small that no one alive could have been impressed by it, an amount he could have been forgiven for thinking pointless. But he did it without a single exception from every dollar that came. And he watched that small saved sum begin for the first time in the whole of his life to grow instead of to vanish as everything always had. And something shifted in that man, something far larger and far more important than the growing sum of money. For the first time, his deep mind received an entirely new instruction. Not the old worn lesson, abundance always escapes me. Money never stays. But a new one proved now in coin he could hold and count in his own hand. Abundance can stay with me. It can gather. It can grow in my hands. He had proved the new lesson to himself undeniably in a language his deep mind could not argue with. And the new conviction, once truly planted, began to do its own quiet work far beyond the reach of the few coins that planted it. The man who had believed himself permanently and unalterably poor began slowly at the first, and then with gathering speed, to climb up and out of the very debt he had long thought was simply his nature and his fate. He did not escape it by earning more. He escaped it by stopping the leak and by teaching his deep mind in coin. It could not dispute a new and a truer lesson that the current could indeed reach him and could stay. So tonight, before you go down into sleep, do this. Name the dam. Name the exact scarcity thought you have rehearsed night after night without ever once knowing you were rehearsing anything at all. The particular fear, the particular lack, the particular old conviction that the water will never reach a man like you. Name it. Look at it plainly in the dark without flinching from it, and then decide here and now simply to stop feeding it. Say with me, the scarcity I have believed is not a truth about the world. It is a habit worn deep by repetition. And what repetition wore in, repetition can wear away. Every night of rehearsed worry was an instruction, and my deep mind built faithfully whatever I taught it. I stopped teaching it scarcity. Now I name the dam. I look at it plainly, and I cease to feed it. The current can reach me and stay and gather and grow in my hands. Part 3. Desire. Definite enough to open the floodgate. You have begun tonight to take down the dam. But the taking down of the dam, vital as it is not yet by itself enough, for a current that is freed but never directed only spreads itself thin across the flat ground and is lost, soaking away into the soil, having turned no wheel and reached no man. To draw the freed current to yourself, to make the great general abundance of the world become your particular and personal wealth to yourself, to make the great general abundance of the world become your particular and personal wealth gathered into your own life, you must do one thing more. you must open a floodgate. And here is the law of the floodgate, which you must understand before you sleep. The floodgate opens only to a definite claim. This is the place where desire enters our hour. For desire is the true starting point of all abundance. But you must understand and understand instantly which desire I mean, because the wrong kind opens no gate at all and never has. I do not mean the vague wish, the soft and pleasant and harmless longing for more, for enough, for a better life, somehow, someday. That kind of wanting is nothing but a hand waved loosely at the passing river. It directs nothing. It draws nothing. The current flows on past such a man exactly as though he had never wished at all, because in any way that matters he has not. No, I mean the definite desire, the named thing, the exact sum, the appointed time, the particular and specific shape of the prosperity you intend to draw out of the current and into your hand. This and this alone is the desire that opens the gate. For this and this alone is the desire that the deep mind is able to act upon. A definite desire is a floodgate cut to an exact size in an exact place in the wall, and the current coming to it pours through it and becomes the man's own. A vague wish is no gate at all. It is only a man standing on the bank with his hat in his hand hoping, while the whole river runs by him and is gone. Hear now why the deep mind requires this exactness of you. For it is no whim and no arbitrary cruelty designed to keep wealth from you. The deep mind cannot release abundance to more, because more is not a sum that anything can be built toward. There is nothing in the word for the deep mind to lay hold of, no figure to reach, no shape to give the water, no place in the wall to cut the gate. It must have the exact figure you intend to draw, named down to the very dollar. It must have the exact service, the exact thing of value that you intend to render to the world in fair and honest exchange. For the current pours only through the gate of value given, and never, not once in all the history of men, through the gate of value merely hoped for and not given. There is no something for nothing at this floodgate or at any other, and it must have the exact time you have appointed for the thing's arrival. For a desire that names no date is a desire that carries no urgency, and the deep mind sets faithfully to work upon what is definite and dated, long before it will so much as glance at what is vague and open-ended. Give it all three together, the exact sum, the exact service, the exact date, and you have cut a clean, true floodgate that the full current can pour through, and become your wealth. Leave any one of the three vague and soft and unnamed, and you have left a ragged gap in the gate through which the pressure escapes, and the wealth dribbles thinly away and is lost. You will remember the river and the channel which I have shown you on other nights, and I will turn the old picture now to this new purpose. The very same volume of water that spread wide and shallow across the flat and level ground becomes a sluggish and stagnant swamp, breeding nothing but reeds and fever. That same water, taken up and forced through one narrow channel, will turn the great wheels of an entire city and light 10,000 lamps against the dark. Not one drop has been added to it. The whole and only difference is that the water has been gathered and aimed. Definiteness is that narrow channel and the floodgate. The definite claim cut to the exact measure of your aim is the opening through which the wide and wandering general current is first gathered and made to pour with force into the one channel that is yours. Make your aim vague, and you cut a ragged, leaking, useless opening that the current will not pour cleanly through. Make your aim exact, the sum, the service, the date, all three, all named, and you cut a clean and a true gate that draws to itself the full and cutting force of the current and turns it into the particular, personal, countable prosperity that is yours and no one else's. So tonight, before sleep takes you down into itself, speak the one definite aim into the dark, not as a wish flung loosely and hopefully at the river, but as a settled claim spoken in the present possessed tense, as a thing already drawn to you, already gathered, already standing in your hand. Say slowly with me. I do not wave a vague hand at the current and merely hope. I cut a clean floodgate with a definite claim. I cut a clean floodgate with a definite claim. I name the exact sum I draw from the abundance of the world. I name the exact service I will render to the world in fair exchange, for I ask nothing for nothing. I name the exact day by which it is already mine. The current pours through the gate I have cut and becomes my particular wealth. I hold this one definite aim and no other, and I carry it with me as I cross over into sleep. Open quote. Open quote. Quote. Everything I'm teaching you comes down to one promise. You can become rich, but only once your mind is wired to attract money instead of repel it. And the fastest way to start that rewiring costs you nothing. I've put the exact daily script that programs your wealth onto one free page. Go to the description. Go to the description right now and grab it. That's your first real step out of broke thinking and into the mind. First real step out of broke thinking and into the mind that pulls money in. Links in the description. Close quote. Close quote. Close quote. Part 4. Imagination, where the wealth is built before the hands. You have cut the floodgate. Now I must show you where the wealth is actually built, for it is not built first by the hands. And the man who sits waiting to build his fortune with his hands before he has first built it in his mind builds nothing at all and waits forever. Every fortune that was ever made upon this earth was made first as an invisible thing held whole and complete in the imagination, long before ever a single hand was lifted to give it physical and visible form. The imagination is the workshop of the mind, and it is there in that workshop and nowhere else in all that the building of every great thing begins. Understand what this means, for it reverses the very order in which the ordinary man believes the world to work, and it is in having that order backward that he keeps himself poor. The ordinary man believes that first must come the doing, and then, if the doing should happen to succeed, comes the thing as its reward. He has it exactly backward. First comes the thing built whole and finished and shining in the imagination, seen there and held there and believed in as a thing already and certainly existing. And only then comes the doing, which is in truth nothing more than the labor of bringing the stubborn, visible world slowly into agreement with the thing that the mind already holds complete. The wealth exists in the imagination before it exists in the hand. Always. Without exception. The man who cannot first build it in his imagination will never to the end of his days build it with his hands. For there will be nothing there for his hands to copy, no pattern to work from, no invisible model for the visible thing to be shaped against. And the man who can build it whole and bright in his imagination and hold it steadily there in faith against all the evidence of his empty present has already done the greater part of the whole work. And the lesser part, the merely physical part, follows after as surely and as naturally as the shadow follows the form that casts it. Let me tell you of a man who built one of the most useful things in the whole history of the world, first in his imagination, and who held it there glowing through the whole history of the world, first in his imagination, and who held it there glowing through more failures than most men suffer in the whole length of a lifetime. And I will tell you about him before I give you his name, so that you may see the thing in him plainly before the name can dazzle you out of seeing it. There was a man who became wholly convinced that he could make light, not the flickering, guttering flame of a candle or a lamp of burning oil, but a steady, clean electric light that would burn inside a bulb of glass and never gutter and never smoke and never need tending. He held this light in his imagination, glowing, finished, real, complete, though no such thing as he imagined existed anywhere upon the entire earth. And though very nearly every learned man of his day, had he asked them, would have told him plainly that the thing could not be done and was a fool's dream. And he set himself to bring the imagined light across. And he set himself to bring the imagined light across out of the invisible and into the visible world where other men could see it and use it. And the world resisted him, as the world resists every man who sets himself to drag a new thing across that threshold from the invisible. He tried one material for the small glowing thread that would carry the light, and it failed him. He tried another, and it too failed. He tried other, and it too failed. He tried hundreds of them, and then he tried thousands, and every last one of them failed. And any reasonable man alive would long since have concluded beyond all doubt that the thing was simply impossible, and the steady light a dream not meant for waking life. But this man did not regard his thousands of failures as defeats at all. And here is the whole secret of him. So do not pass over it. He regarded each single failure not as a defeat, but as the successful elimination of one more way that would not work. One more wrong path found out and crossed off the great map, WAPS, bringing him by exactly that much nearer to the one right path that remained. The light still glowed whole and certain and undimmed in his imagination through every one of those thousands of failures. And he held it there. And he simply kept on testing materials, thousands upon thousands of them, refusing with a refusal past all ordinary stubbornness to let go of the invisible lamp he held in his mind, until he had at last found the way to make it visible to all the world. And at the very last he found it. The thin thread glowed and held and burned steady and clean, and the imagined light became a real light. And that real light spread out across the whole of the earth, and it burns this very night in the room where you are lying as you hear my voice. The man was Thomas Edison. He did not first make the lamp and then afterward come to believe in it. He believed in it first, held it complete and glowing in his imagination through thousands of failures, and so made it at last. And that, mark it well, is the order in which every great thing that has ever been made was made. Now hear why I bring you this story here at the very door of sleep and not at noon. Hear why I bring you this story here at the very door of sleep and not at noon. The man who waits to feel certain before he will consent to speak, certain waits forever. And the floodgate swings quietly shut again while he is still waiting for the feeling. But the man who speaks the certainty first, before ever the feeling has come, in the very teeth of all the plain evidence of his own empty hands, that man finds the feeling rising up the road to come and meet his words, and finds the gate held open by the words themselves, until the feeling at last arrives to take over the holding. Let me tell you of a man who held in nothing but pure faith and imagination, a certainty so utterly absurd by every measure of his own age, that the sensible men around him thought him more than a little mad, and who held that absurd certainty steadily until the whole world was at last forced to come round and agree with him. And I will tell you about him before I give you his name. There was a man who became convinced of a thing, that in the day he learned, or an outright fool, that the living human voice, the very actual sound of a man speaking aloud, could be taken up and carried along a thin wire and heard whole and clear and recognizable by another man standing far, far away. Consider, lying there, how such a claim must have struck the people of his time. A voice was a thing of the air, of the breath, of the very room a man stood and spoke in. The notion that it could somehow be poured into a copper wire and run for miles across the countryside and come out the far end, still a living human voice, was to nearly every soul who heard it proposed, simply and flatly, contrary to all reason and all experience. The voice belonged to the speaker and to the passing moment. It could no more be sent down a wire than yesterday could. But this man held the certainty anyway, held it against them all. He held it in his imagination, traveling its length, arriving whole, being heard at the far end by another. And he held it in faith as a settled fact, merely awaiting its working out in time, and not as a wild gamble that might go against every reason in the world that said it could not be so. And he labored long toward it, and he was met, as every such man is met, with failure after failure after failure. For the world resists the dragging across of an impossible thing, but his faith did not waver through any of it. And mark closely why it did not waver, for this is the very heart of the lesson. His faith did not waver because his faith did not depend upon the evidence in the first place. It had been built first and held first before any evidence existed at all. And so the absence of evidence could not shake what the presence of evidence had not been needed to establish. The faith came first, and the evidence was made in the end to follow it. And one day, the living voice did travel the length of the wire and was heard clear at the far end. And the flatly impossible thing stood there accomplished and real. And out of it grew a way of speaking across great distances that now in our day wraps the entire round earth about. The man was Alexander Graham Bell. He did not first prove that the voice could travel, and then, on the strength of the proof, come to believe it. He believed it first in faith and in imagination, back when it was still absurd and unproven and laughable, and the believing came before the proof. And it was the believing that made the proof at last possible. That is the faith I mean to build in you on this night and on the nights to come. Not a thin hope that flickers and gutters out at the first dark and discouraging hour, but a settled, unshaken certainty that the current is even now flowing toward you, and that the gate you cut stands open. A certainty held steady by your own repeated word until the very feeling of it has become wholly your own. And we build that faith in the one and only way it has ever been built by any man, by speaking the certainty as a present and a settled fact again and again and again in the receptive hour at the door of sleep until the deep mind takes the repeated word for established truth. So speak it now, and speak it as a thing already entirely so, whether or not the feeling of it has yet arrived to you on this particular night. Say slowly with me. I do not hope the abundance might one day come. I know the current is flowing toward me now, and I know the floodgates stand. I hold this certainty, as Bell held the voice upon the wire, as a settled fact merely awaiting its working out, held firm against every reason of my empty hands. I speak it as already true tonight, without the feeling if the feeling will not yet come, for I know the feeling will rise up the road to meet my spoken words. My faith holds the floodgate open through all the night, and the doubt sets not one stone back into the river. And speak it without the feeling if you must on this night. There is no failure in that, and it is no lie. The feeling will come of its own accord on the third night, or the 10th, or the 30th. Only do not stop. For the man who stops on the second night complaining that he felt nothing is the very man who would have felt everything on the fourth. Part 6. The counselors who visit in the night. There is one more practice I would give you before we begin to draw toward the close, and it is the most intimate of all the things I know, and one I have very rarely spoken of plainly to anyone, because it is so easily mistaken for foolishness by men who have never once tried it for themselves. But you are lying here in the dark at the very threshold where this practice does its work. And so I will give it to you exactly as I have used it myself through the longest and the hardest years of my own life. The deep mind, I have told you across this hour, reaches out past the narrow walls of your single skull toward an intelligence far larger than your own. And the sleeping hours and the quiet hour just before them, the hour you are in now, are precisely when guidance cross that connection. They are when the mind, at last quieted and made receptive and laid open, is able to receive what the loud and busy daylight shuts firmly out all day long. Most men this whole hour run uselessly to waste. Or worse, far worse, they fill it with worry, and so they receive across that open connection only more of the very thing they fear. But the hour need not be wasted, and it need not be poisoned. It can be used deliberately and with intent to draw upon the wisdom and the very qualities of the greatest minds that have ever lived upon the earth. And this is the practice that I have called in my own life and work the invisible counselors. Let me tell you how I myself came to it, for it is my own story, and I give it to you tonight as my own. In a certain time of my life, a hard time, a time when I needed within me qualities that I did not yet in any way possess, when I needed a courage I plainly lacked, and a patience I had never managed to learn, and the deep steadiness of men, far greater than I then was, in the quiet hour before sleep, I would call together in imagination a private council of the great men I most admired across all of history. I would hold them there before me in the dark as vividly, clearly as I could possibly make them stand, each in his place, and I would call upon each one of them in turn for the one particular quality that's needed to draw from him. From this one, persistence that no defeat could break. From that one, the courage to decide and to stand by the deciding. From another, the patience to endure a long and unrewarded labor. From another still, the faith that does not waver when every visible sign says it should. Night after night after night, I held this imagined council in the dark and asked of each great mind the very quality for which he had been famous in his life, and held that quality up before me as a thing that I was even now taking into myself and making my own. Now I knew, of course, and I would have you know that I knew, that I was not in any literal way truly speaking with the dead. I was under no illusion of that kind. What I was truly doing was building by imagination and by repetition the very qualities that I summoned, drawing them up, in fact, out of my own deep mind, which reaches always toward that larger intelligence in which all such qualities already and eternally exist, and working them patiently into my own law that works everything into the deep mind. Now, if you're ready to stop learning and start seeing evidence, I built something for you. It's called the 14-Day Money Magnet Protocol. 14 days, one simple ritual a day, and the goal is concrete. Attract your first $100 out of nowhere. And here's my promise. If it doesn't happen, you get your money, because $100 isn't the point. It's the proof the law is working for you. Start it at theselife.com/moneymagnet. Second link in the description. Open quote, repetition held with feeling in the receptive hour. Close quote. Close quote. And in time, for these things are always slow, and I will not pretend to you that they are swift. The qualities that I had summoned in imagination became my own in plain fact. The courage that I had asked for night after night became at last my courage. The persistence that I had called upon became my persistence. I had communed in the dark at the door of sleep night after night with the great qualities of the greatest men I knew of. And by the long communing with them, I had become in some real and lasting measure a man who himself possessed those qualities. For here is the law that lies beneath the whole of it. For it is one of the very deepest laws I have ever uncovered in a long life spent uncovering. What you commune with at the door of sleep, you become. The company of the mind is every bit as decisive in the shaping of a man as the company of the body. And more so, perhaps far more so, for the company of the mind reaches a man in the one receptive hour, when the deep mind lies open and takes in its instruction without resistance. The man who fills the hour before sleep with the qualities of greatness, with courage, with steady faith, with unbreakable persistence, with the calm wisdom of the very finest minds that he is able to hold up before himself in the dark, that man works those qualities into his own character through the long night and rises a little greater than he lay down. And the man who fills that very same hour, that very same open and receptive hour, with worry, with smallness, with the close company of his own crowding fears, voices of all the men who ever told him count to nothing, that man works those into his character instead, just as faithfully, just as surely. And he rises in the morning a little more fearful and alert than he lay down to sleep. The hour will shape you either way. Of that you have no choice at all. The only choice that is left to you, and it is the whole of your freedom in the matter, is what you will give the hour to shape you with. So, tonight, choose. Choose deliberately the qualities that you will summon to yourself at the threshold of sleep. The courage that you know you need. The faith that you know you need. The unbreaking persistence to hold your one aim through every dark and encouraging hour that is yet to come. Hold them up before there in the dark as clearly and as vividly as I held my own counselors, and then let the deep mind them through the long night into your very... Say slowly with me, what I commune with at the door of sleep I become. I will not give this open and receptive hour to my fears, nor to the discouraging voices of beaten men, to be shaped smaller and more fearful by them through the night. I summon instead the very qualities of the greatest minds I know, the courage, the faith, the persistence, the steady and patient wisdom, and I hold them up before me in the dark as things I am even now taking into myself. And through the long night, the deep mind works them into my own character until the courage I summon has become my own courage, and the persistence I call upon has become my own persistence, and I rise a larger man than I lay down. Part 7. The one decision that frees the whole river. There is a thing I must give you now before we come to the gathering and the close. For without it, a man may take down stones from his dam every night for a full year together and still wake every single morning to find half of them quietly set back into the river overnight. He cannot for his life understand fully in the dark. He speaks his creed as he is told. He names his aim with care. And still the wall half rebuilds itself each night while he sleeps. And still the water does not reach him. And he begins at last to despair and to believe that the whole teaching was a lie. But it was not the teaching. The reason is always, in every such case, one and the same. He has never once made the one decision that holds the river open. He has wished and he has resolved and he has solemnly intended again and again. He has never truly decided. And until a man has truly and finally decided, all of his patient nightly labor runs straight out again through the one single gap that he has all along closed. So let me make the difference plain. For it is the very difference between the men who are carried helplessly through their lives like driftwood upon the current and the men who take the rudder in hand and steer. A true decision is final. It is definite. It has no road of retreat whatsoever left lying open behind it. It is not the soft and pleasant intention that a man renews to himself each new year and has quietly abandoned again by the spring. It is not the wish dressed up in the borrowed clothing of a resolve and paraded solemnly about for a week before it is forgotten. The man who has not truly decided keeps always somewhere a single door standing quietly open, the unspoken, half-hidden possibility that if the thing should grow too hard, if the dark hour should last too long and press too sorely, he may yet give the whole thing up and slip back unblamed to the smaller and the easier life he came from. He would never once say this aloud, even to himself. He may not even truly know that he is doing it, but the door stands open in him all the same. And that one open door is itself a gap in the dam, and through that gap the whole of his resolve drains silently and ceaselessly away. No matter how many stones he takes down, hear why this single open door ruins the... For it is a matter of the deepest law of the deep mind. The deep mind does not act upon what a man merely announces to himself and to the world. It pays no heed at all to his fine speeches of intention, however loud, nor to his solemn declarations of high purpose, however grave. It acts only and entirely upon what he has truly, finally, irrevocably decided in the very depths of himself. And a man who has carefully left himself a way out has, in plain fact, decided precisely nothing. He has only wished with rather more words than usual and a rather graver face. The deep mind reads the reserve and not the announcement. It reads the open back door and not the brave words spoken at the front gate. And reading a man who is in his secret heart still fully prepared to quit, should the cost, the deep mind does not trouble itself to pour the great current through for him. And why on earth should it? Why should it labor to build a thing that the man himself has never yet committed to keep? I want you to consider, lying there in the dark, what a true decision looks like when it is made by men who have deliberately left themselves no road of retreat whatsoever. No door open. No way back. No possibility of slipping quietly away should the price prove higher than they had hoped. For there is no plainer or more terrible picture of it in all the long history of men, and I have turned to it myself more than once in the hours when my own resolve wanted stiffening, and I felt that old back door creaking quietly open within me. There was once a company of men who came together in a perilous and a frightening time to put their names to a document, a declaration that they intended from that day forward to be free. And now I must ask you not to let the long distance of the passing years soften and prettify what that signing truly meant into some mere ceremony of paper and ink and high words. To set your name to that particular page was to commit an act for which, should the cause they served go down to failure, the certain penalty was death. To be taken and hanged as a traitor to the crown that still claimed full dominion over them and theirs. Every single man who stepped forward to sign that page knew this with a perfect and a chilling clarity. There was no road back at all once the ink upon his name had dried. For a signature once given can never afterward be unsigned, and the men who held the power of life and death over them were not the kind of men to forget a name once it had appeared upon such a document as that. And mark this well, for it is the very point. These were not reckless men with nothing left to lose, not desperate men gambling away lives that were already ruined and worthless to them. Men high standing in their communities of comfortable and settled and pleasant lives. Men who, in the simple act of stepping forward and signing, placed the whole of it, every bit, directly upon the scales. Their fortunes, their lands, their families, and their own living necks, with no assurance given them anywhere that the cause would in the end prevail. And yet one after another, they came forward, signed. And in the very act of signing, each one of them burned every ship behind him at a single stroke. They had decided. There was no longer any possibility at all of turning back, because they had deliberately and with their eyes open destroyed the very possibility of turning back. And it was precisely that, the sheer totality of the decision, the deliberate and irreversible closing of every last exit, that gave their whole cause the terrible force it would need across the long and bitter years that followed. For men who cannot retreat fight altogether differently than men who can. A purpose with no backdoor at all standing behind it moves with a power that a hedged and a reserved and a half-committed purpose can never once in all its days approach. 56 men set their names to that page, and by the sheer finality of their signing, they set in motion a thing that all the hesitation and all the cautious half measures in the entire world could never have moved so much as a single inch. That is the decision I am asking of you tonight concerning your own prosperity, your own aim, your taking down of your own dam. Not a wish for the 100th weary time. Not a resolve that keeps its quiet escape route carefully in reserve just in case. A final and an irrevocable closing of every last exit. You must decide with no reserve whatsoever held back that you will hold your aim and take down your dam and not quit. And you must close in your own mind deliberately and with open eyes the back door of giving up, in the very same way that those men closed theirs forever what they had of turning back and laid their own lives upon the scales. For just so long as that single door stands open within you, the deep knows full well that it stands open, and it acts upon the reserve and not upon the resolve. And the dam half rebuilds itself each and every night, because some part of you has never once truly committed to keeping it down. But close that door. Close it finally with your own hand tonight, and the whole river is freed at last and stays freed. So make the decision now. Final. Here in the dark, with no road back. Say slowly with me. I make one true decision tonight with no reserve held back and no road of retreat left behind it. Do not merely wish, and I do not merely resolve. I decide finally and irrevocably. I close the back door of giving up deliberately, with open eyes, the very way the 56 closed theirs when they signed away every chance of turning back and laid their own lives upon the scales. There is no longer any possibility of my quitting, because I have destroyed that possibility myself with my own hand. The deep mind reads my decision, and not a reserve, for I have left it no reserve to read. The river is freed, and it stays freed, for the man who held the door open has shut it now forever. Let settle hard all the way down into you. The man truly decided sleeps differently than the man who has only wished, and he wakes in time a wholly and a permanently different man. Part 8. The one aim that can shape a whole life. I have asked you on this night and on others before it to fix upon one definite aim and to hold it. And I know well the doubt that rises quietly in a man when he first hears that asking. Even when he never once lets the doubt rise so far as his lips, he wonders privately whether one single aim is too small and too poor and too narrow a thing to give a whole life over to. He wonders whether to fix upon one purpose is to wall himself off forever from all the other purposes he might otherwise have pursued, to narrow down a life that might have been broad and various and free into one single thin and confining lane. He fears that in choosing the one road, he forecloses upon all the others, and that he will arrive at the far end of his single chosen aim, only to look up and find that he has missed the whole wide and open country he might have wandered freely all his days. So before we come to the gathering and the close of this hour, I want to give you the proof out of another man's life, but the proof of my own life. That one definite aim, taken up and held without wavering, does not narrow a man's life at all. It builds it. It can shape the whole of a life from one end of it clean to the other and leave out nothing along the way that was ever truly worth the keep. Let me tell you then how my own life's work first began, for I have very rarely told it to you plainly, and you are owed the telling of it on night, lying there in the dark, with the old question still unsettled somewhere within you. When I was a young man, scarcely more than a boy, no fortune at all to my name, and no the speaking, I was sent out on a simple errand for a magazine to go and interview the man who was perhaps the very richest and most powerful industrialist in the whole of the country, a man whose vast fortune had been built up out of steel, and whose single word could move the markets of nations. There is a law of abundance that prosperous men use every night of their lives, and almost none of them will ever speak of it aloud. Not because they have sworn an oath to keep it secret, but because the crowd would laugh at it if they did. For this law costs nothing. It demands no struggle, no early rising, no grinding labor that other men can see and admire and respect a man for. It asks only that you use the hours you're already spending every single night asleep. And because it is free, and because it asks for no visible sweat, the crowd dismisses it out of hand and goes on believing, as the crowd has always believed, that wealth must be wrung from a stingy world by force. So the law stays quiet, used by the few who know it, ignored by the many who would rather be told that prosperity is hard, because a hard thing for a man's pride more than a free one ever could. I am going to give it to you tonight. And here is the very heart of it. The one thing I want you to carry past heart of it. The one thing I want you to carry past the threshold of sleep above all the rest. Prosperity is not a thing you must build from nothing by the labor of your hands. It is a current already flowing, already moving the world and through your life this very moment. The way a great river moves, whether or not any single man upon its banks understands where its water comes from or where it goes, you do not have to create the current. You could not if you tried. It was always there before you were born, and it will be thereafter flowing endlessly. And the whole question of a man's prosperity, the entire question, the only one that matters, is not whether the current exists, for it always has, but whether he lets it flow to him, or whether he has dammed it, without ever once knowing that his own hand was the hand upon the stones. And I tell you plainly, before this hour goes 1 minute further, you have been damming it every night without knowing. So tonight you stop. Tonight you begin stone by stone in no hurry to take down the dam, and you let the current that was always flowing begin at last to carry you while you sleep. Understand plainly what this night is for. Understand plainly what this night is for, and do not mistake it for what it is not. You are not here to rest from the work of building wealth. The night is not your time off from that work. The night is the work, the deepest and the truest part of it, the part the laboring crowd never learns. So dim your light now, lie still. Let these words pass through you without resistance. The way water passes through an open hand, taking nothing, fighting nothing, and come back night after night after night. For the repetition is the whole of it, and the repetition is the 3 hours, and the 3 hours are how a life is quietly remade in the dark. Part 1. The current was always flowing. Let me give you first the great claim that everything else in this hour rests upon. For if you take hold of this one thing and let it down into you, all the rest will follow of its own weight. Open quote. Open quote. Real quick, I just want to speak from the heart for a second. Thank you. I mean it. You showing up here over and over is the reason I get to do what I love. And I never want that to become something I take for granted. Whether life is treating you kindly right now or you're going through one of the harder chapters, I'm just really glad you're here with me. We found each other for a reason, and I don't say that lightly. By the way, if that free sheet's still sitting there undownloaded, grab it now. I made it because I think it can genuinely help you. No rush. Mostly, I just want to say I'm grateful you're here. The way the loaded cart follows the horse, once the horse has decided to move. Abundance is a natural law. Hear that and weigh it. It is not a favor handed down from above to the lucky few. And it is not a prize awarded by some stern judge to men who have earned the right to it. It is a current, a movement built into the very nature of things, as fixed and as faithful as the law that runs water downhill, that turns seed into harvest, that wheels the seasons one into the next without any man to push them along. The world is not at its root a place of scarcity, into which a handful of fortunate men have somehow managed to import a little wealth against the general drought. That is the picture the poor man carries, and it is false to the bone. The world is a place of moving abundance, a current flowing endlessly in every direction through every life, and you live inside that current whether you have ever once in your days noticed it or not. So understand what this means about the prosperous man, for it is not at all what you have believed. The prosperous man has not performed some miracle of importing water into a desert by the strength of his arm. He has done something far simpler and far quieter than that. He has merely let the current that was always there flow to him instead of damning it away. And understand too, and this is the part that overturns the whole of your thinking. So let it land. The poor man is not standing in a place where there is no water. He is not the victim of a drought. He is standing in a dry bed below a dam, and the dam was built by his own hands, and the water, he is certain, does not exist. For a man like him stands piled high and waiting just upstream of the wall he himself raised. This is the very thing the scarcity-minded man can never quite bring himself to believe. And his disbelief is itself the chief stone that holds the whole dam fast in its place. He looks about him at the plain facts of his life, the empty account, the bill he cannot pay, the long gray years of going without. And from these facts, he draws the only conclusion that seems reasonable to a man standing in a dry bed, that there is simply no water for one such as him. The river runs to other men, to luckier men, to men born nearer its banks. It was never meant to reach him, and it never will. And so, standing there in the dry bed, perfectly certain of the drought, he never once thinks to turn and look upstream, where the very water he has sworn does not exist, stands gathered and pressing against a high wall of his own fearful thought, kept from him by the single thing in all the world that could ever have kept it from him, his own settled conviction that it would not come. For hear how the dam is built, and by what hands and in what hours. The deep mind fed a steady, faithful diet of scarcity, by nightly repetition, builds that wall a little higher and a little stronger with every night that passes. Every single night the drifting man lies awake in the dark and counts his lack, going over the shortage once more, rehearsing the old worry, tallying yet again all the money he does not have and all the doors that have shut in his face. He is not merely suffering through another bad and sleepless hour, though he believes that is all he is doing. He is carrying stones. He is handing his deep mind in the most receptive and unguarded hour it knows, in all the day, a long and detailed and feelingful instruction in the doctrine of scarcity. And the deep mind, being faithful and being utterly blind, takes that instruction exactly as given and lays another course of stones across the river. And the wall rises by that much, and the bed below it grows by that much drier. And in the gray of the morning, the man wakes once more, certain all over again that there is no water for him, never once suspecting, never in his whole life suspecting, that he spent the dark hours of the night with his own two hands, building higher the very wall that holds the water back. So tonight we begin the only work that finally matters. Tonight you take down the first stone. And hear me, you do not have to tear the whole dam down in a single night. You could not, and you are not asked to. And the man who demands of himself that the whole wall fall at once only exhausts himself and quits. You have only to do two things tonight. Stop adding to it and take down the first stone, and then come back tomorrow night, rested, and take down another and another the night after that. The wall went up one stone at a time across the years, and it comes down one stone at a time, and that is enough. For the current needs only the first small gap to begin its work. Say within yourself now slowly with me, begin its work. Say within yourself now slowly with me. Abundance is a current that was always flowing, and I live inside it. whether I have known it or not. I am not standing where there is no water. I am standing below a dam I built myself with my own fearful thought, stone by stone, night after night. Tonight I stop building it. Tonight I take down the first stone, and the current that was always flowing begins at last to move toward me. Let that pass down into you. Do not argue with it tonight. There are many nights ahead in which to take down all the rest. Close quote. Close quote. Whatever the day behind you was, whatever the empty account still says when you tally it up, whatever has not yet come and seems in the dark, as though it never will tonight, you lie down a man who knows at the very last where the water is, and who knows that he himself was the one who built the dam, and who knows that the dam can come down, and who has decided finally, and with no road back to bring it down. That is not nothing. That is not a small thing. That is the whole turning of a life begun here tonight in the dark, in the one quiet hour that nearly all men let run uselessly to waste. So go under now, and go under prosperous in mind, for that is the only prosperity that ever comes first. And it is the only one that has never once in all of time failed to come before the other. And it has come to you on this night. The morning when it arrives will ask you to be small again, the way every morning of your life has asked it of you. Do not answer it. Rise in full possession of what you set here in the dark. And when the night comes round again, as the night always does, come back to this hour, and we will take down another stone together, you and I, and then another still, until the river runs free at last of its own accord, and the current arrives at your door without your ever laboring for it. And you no longer have any need at all of an old voice in the dark to remind you of what you will by then have learned down deep in your very bones, that the current was always flowing toward you, and waited only all this while for you to take down the wall. Rest now. There is nothing left to do. The work goes on without you. The current was always flowing. I built the dam, and I have begun to take it down. I am prosperous in mind tonight, and in the morning, I wake prosperous. Rest now. Quick one. If you want the money attraction law to prove itself to you fast, the 14-day money magnet protocol is designed to attract your first $100 in 2 weeks, or you get every cent back. Zero risk, real evidence. It's the second link in the description. Go grab it right now. There is something I want you to understand about the next 40 minutes before the first word of instruction is spoken. You are not listening to this in the ordinary condition of waking alertness. You are listening to it in a condition of approaching rest, the mind settling, the day releasing its grip, the analytical faculty that scrutinizes and resists new instruction becoming quieter with every breath. And what I have to tell you tonight is designed for exactly this condition, because what I have to tell you concerns the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is more open to new instruction in this particular condition, than at any other moment of the ordinary day. In the autumn of 1929, the financial markets of the United States collapsed. In a matter of weeks, millions of people who had been accumulating money found themselves watching it disappear. Banks failed. Businesses closed. Men who had been prosperous the previous spring were standing in lines by the winter. Most observers at the time and since have attributed this catastrophe to economic causes, to speculation, to unsound banking practice, to the inevitable correction of an inflated market. All of these explanations have their merit. But there is an explanation that the economists did not give, and that I regard as the most important of all. What the crash of 1929 actually did, more consequentially than anything it did to the financial system, was sweep millions of people from one side of a stream to the other. There exists, as I have described in my work, a great unseen stream of power, which may be compared to a river. One side of it flows in one direction, carrying all who enter it onward and upward toward wealth. The other side flows in the opposite direction, carrying all who drift into it steadily downward toward poverty. The stream does not consist of money. It consists of thought. The positive emotions of thought, desire, faith, love, enthusiasm, hope, form the side that carries a man to fortune. The negative emotions, fear, doubt, worry, envy, poverty thought form the side that carries him away from it. Before the crash, millions of people had been on the prosperous side of the stream. After it, those same millions found themselves on the other side, not because their money was gone, but because the dominant content of their minds had changed. Fear had replaced faith. Poverty thought had replaced abundance thought. And the subconscious mind, which acts upon whatever it is given with complete impartiality, began to produce the physical equivalent of what it was now receiving. This is what I mean when I say that prosperity is programmed into the subconscious. It is not a metaphor. It is the description of a mechanism. And in the next 40 minutes, I'm going to give you that mechanism completely and deliver it in the precise condition in which it goes deepest and stays longest. Let the words carry you. The subconscious is already listening. Part 1. The two streams, poverty consciousness and prosperity consciousness. Which side are you on? Every man who has accumulated a great fortune has recognized the existence of the stream described in the opening of this hour. He may not have used my language. He may not have read my books or studied the philosophy I was commissioned to organize. But he recognized it either through deliberate study or through the intuition of a man who has spent enough time observing what he and the men around him attract and repel, that the quality of thought he habitually carries determines with the reliability of a natural law the quality of circumstances and people and opportunities that his life attracts to him. And every man who has remained in poverty, despite genuine intelligence and genuine desire to prosper, has also experienced this law, though in its reverse application. He has experienced it as the persistent, puzzling, deeply discouraging phenomenon of working hard and attracting nothing commensurate with the effort, of trying and failing and trying again and failing again, without understanding and trying again and failing again, without understanding why the results do not match the effort, without understanding that the effort is not the primary mechanism. The thought is the primary mechanism, and the thought held habitually, daily, in the private domain of the subconscious mind has been pointing in the wrong direction. Let me state the law in the plainest language I can find for it. The ether in which this earth floats, the medium in which we move and have our being, is a form of energy moving at an inconceivably high rate of vibration. It is filled with a form of universal power that adapts itself to the nature of the thoughts we hold in our minds and influences us in natural ways to transmute those thoughts into their physical equivalent. This power makes no attempt to discriminate between constructive thoughts and destructive thoughts. It does not favor the man who wishes to prosper over the man who fears poverty. It urges us to translate into physical reality the thoughts of poverty as quickly as it influences us to act upon thoughts of riches. The law is impersonal. It serves whatever thought is given to it. And the thought that is given to it most consistently, the thought that has been repeated most often, held most persistently, felt most deeply, is the thought that the subconscious delivers to the law for translation. Our brains become magnetized with dominating thoughts we hold in our minds by means that no man has yet been able to fully describe. These magnets attract to us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life that harmonize with the nature of those dominating thoughts. Before a man can accumulate riches in great abundance, he must magnetize his mind with intense desire for riches. He must become, in the precise technical sense of the phrase, money conscious until the desire for money drives him to create definite plans for acquiring it. And here is the statement I want to hold before you with every emphasis at my command. Poverty consciousness will voluntarily seize the mind that is not occupied with money consciousness. Poverty consciousness develops without deliberate effort. It requires no cultivation. It fills the mental garden that the gardener has left unattended, in the same way weeds fill ground that has not been planted, automatically, persistently, and with a thoroughness that leaves very little room for anything else. Money consciousness, by contrast, must be created to order. It does not arrive on its own. It is built deliberately, daily, through the specific practice of giving the subconscious mind the instruction of abundance rather than the instruction of lack, and then sustained through the law of cosmic habit force until it becomes the permanent, self-sustaining orientation of the mind. Let me tell you about a man in the state of Illinois who understood this principle in a practical rather than a theoretical way. He was a banker, a successful one, by the measure of his institution's performance through years that tested many financial organizations. Men of different temperaments came to see him regularly. Men with problems, men with complaints, men with the accumulated weight of difficult circumstances and the habit formed through years of rehearsal of beginning every conversation with the current catalog of what had gone wrong. This banker had placed a sign in his private office, visible to every person who entered, impossible to overlook. The sign read, "We talk and think only of abundance here. If you have a tale of woe, please keep it, as we do not want it." Some who saw this sign regarded it as the eccentricity of a successful man who could afford the luxury of optimism because things had gone well for him. This reading entirely missed the point. This banker was not optimistic because he was successful. He had been successful in no small part because he had understood something about the mechanics of thought that the men who brought their tales of woe had not understood. He knew that the poverty thought, allowed to take up residence in the environment of his daily work, spoken freely, repeated without examination, added to by every subsequent voice that joined it, would do what a destructive force does in any system it enters. It would reduce, it would undermine, it would replace the dominant vibration of abundance thought that his organization required with the dominant vibration of poverty thought that would eventually produce its physical equivalent, just as reliably as any other dominant thought produces its equivalent. He was not naive about difficulty. Bankers deal with difficulty as a matter of professional necessity. What he refused was the habit of allowing difficulty to become the dominant content of the minds in his environment, because he understood that the dominant content of the minds in his environment was, in the most literal and practical sense, the product his environment was going to produce. Form the habit beginning tonight of talking and thinking of prosperity and abundance, not the hollow performance of a man pretending that circumstances are better than they are, the genuine, daily, deliberate practice of directing the content of your thought toward the abundant outcome rather than the scarce one in the conversations you have, in the thoughts you allow to circulate through your mind without challenge, in the assessments you make of your circumstances, asking as a matter of conscious habit, not what is missing, but what is available. The ether is filled at all times with vibrations of fear and poverty and failure, and equally with vibrations of prosperity and health and success. Both are present simultaneously. Both are available to every mind at every moment. The mind attracts from the ether whatever harmonizes with its own dominant vibration. The man whose dominant vibration is abundance thought is fishing in the abundant stream of the ether. The man whose dominant vibration is poverty thought is fishing in the other stream. Each is catching what he is fishing for, with a reliability that the law makes impossible to avoid. Which stream are you fishing in tonight? Which stream do you want to be fishing in when your subconscious goes to work through the hours of sleep that follow these words? The answer to the second question is within your power. It has always been within your power. The channel must be cleared. The channel must be cleared. The correct vibration must be established, and then the subconscious must be given the specific instruction it needs to carry the work forward. That instruction is what the remaining hours of this night are for. Part 2. The subconscious works while you sleep. The nightly method. What to plant, how to plant it, when it goes deepest. Your subconscious mind works continuously. While you are awake, it works. While you are asleep, it works. It does not rest. When you rest, it does not stop. When the conscious mind stops its active reasoning and settles into the quiet of sleep, the conscious mind takes its leave at the end of every day. The subconscious mind does not. And here is the consequence of that fact that I want you to hold clearly in your mind before I describe the specific practice. Every night through the hours of your sleep, your subconscious mind is working with whatever material was given to it, most recently and most powerfully. It is organizing. It is connecting. It is drawing upon the vast storehouse of infinite intelligence for the plans, the impressions, and the inspirations through which the dominant thoughts it has received will be translated into their physical equivalents. It does not idle. It does not rest. It works. And the quality of the work it does through the night is determined entirely by the quality of the instruction it was given before the sleep began. This is the most important practical fact about the hours of sleep that I have ever encountered in the study of the subconscious mind, and it changes everything about how a man should approach the last minutes before he closes his eyes. Those last minutes are not merely the end of the day. They are the most fertile ground available for the planting of prosperity instruction. In the condition of approaching sleep, the condition in which you are now receiving these words, the analytical resistance of the star's conscious mind is at its lowest. The faculty that examines each new idea for possible objection and familiar prediction has been quieting throughout the hour, and is now quieter than it has been since the morning. The gate between the surface reasoning of the waking mind and the deeper mechanism of the subconscious is standing more fully open than at any other moment of the ordinary day. What enters through that gate in these minutes enters without the normal degree of scrutiny that the fully alert, fully resistant waking mind would apply. It goes deeper. It takes root more completely. It seeds the subconscious with the instruction it carries at a depth and permanence that midday instruction delivered to the full analytical resistance of the alert, busy, skeptical working mind cannot approach. This is why the instruction to read the written statement of desire before retiring is not merely a recommendation about the timing of daily practice. It is a recommendation about the mechanics of how the subconscious receives instruction. The man who reads his prosperity statement in the last minutes before is delivering his instruction at the precise moment when the receiving mechanism is most open and most responsive. He is planting his seeds in the most fertile condition of the soil's daily cycle. I want to tell you about a child, my own son, because his story makes this principle visible in the most personal and the most irrefutable way I know. My son was born without hearing, not impaired hearing. The physicians were emphatic about the distinction. He was, by their diagnosis and their prognosis, born without the capacity to hear at all. I was told this plainly, and told to accept it. I did not accept it. From the earliest days of his life, I began to plant in his mind through every means available to me, through the repeated suggestion of possibility, through the refusal to treat his condition as permanent, through the consistent daily emotionalized instruction of the subconscious mind, that hearing was not beyond his reach, the conviction that a way would be found. I am not able to explain the exact mechanism by which what followed occurred. I do not think any physician of my era could have explained it either. What I can tell you is what happened. My son, who had been told he would never hear, developed the ability to hear with sufficient clarity that he could eventually attend school without the special accommodation his condition had originally required. He went on to help develop a hearing device that benefited thousands of others. He built a productive life that the diagnosis of his infancy had declared impossible. Did the repeated instruction of the subconscious mind, his father's faith planted daily through the channel of autosuggestion, produce this result? I believe it did. I cannot prove it with the certainty that a laboratory experiment produces. But I know what was done, and I know what followed. And the pattern is consistent with the law I have described throughout my work. Whatever is planted in the subconscious mind with sufficient faith and sufficient persistence through the specific method of repeated instruction, charged with the full force of genuine emotional conviction, will seek its expression in physical reality through whatever means are available to it. Not sometimes, not when circumstances cooperate as a law as reliably as the law of growth that turns the seed into the tree. Now I want to give you the specific practice, not as a suggestion to be considered, but as a precise instruction to be applied tonight and every night that follows. Write out the statement of your prosperity desire in full. Do not allow the validity of this instruction to deceive you about its importance. The writing is not a formality. The writing is the act by which the vague, shapeless inclination toward prosperity is forced to clarify itself into a specific, named, dated, describable intention. The subconscious mind cannot organize its effort toward a destination it cannot see. The writing makes the destination visible. The statement must contain the specific sum you desire, not a range, not a comfortable approximation, a number specific enough to be written down and held in the mind as a distinct image. It must contain the date by which you intend to possess it, the service or value you intend to give in exchange for the law that governs all genuine prosperity requires an exchange. And the man who has named what he will give is a man who can act, and the plan through which you intend to proceed. Place this statement where it will be seen in the last minutes before sleep each night and in the first minutes upon arising each morning. These 2 daily readings are the fundamental practice of money consciousness, not because repetition has magic in it, but because the subconscious mind accepts what is given to it consistently and with feeling, and begins through the work of each night and each morning to organize the circumstances, connections, and plans that the instruction describes. Read it with feeling. This is not optional. The subconscious mind responds to thought charged with emotion, not to cold words spoken without genuine. When you read the statement in these minutes of approach to sleep, allow yourself to inhabit the scene it describes. See the prosperity is already present. Feel what the man feels who has achieved what you desire. Do not strive for it anxiously. The grasping energy of anxiety is fear wearing the clothing of desire. Instead, hold the scene with the quiet certainty of a man who has planted in good soil and knows without the law of growth will do the rest. The subconscious is most open in this condition. The instruction is entering now at precisely the depth that the practice requires. Part 3. The prosperity formula. What to say, what to see, what to feel, the complete nightly practice. There is a trick, a perfectly legitimate trick that a man may play upon his own subconscious mind to accelerate the reception of the prosperity instruction he wishes to plant. The trick is this. Conduct yourself when delivering the instruction as though you are already in possession of the prosperity you desire. I say trick because the conscious mind knows it is not yet entirely true. The statement describes a future state as a present fact. The sum named has not yet been accumulated. The date has not yet arrived. The prosperity the statement describes is real in intention and certain in the direction of its arrival, but it is not yet present in the physical world in the specific form the statement describes. And here is why the trick works, and why it is legitimate rather than self-deceptive. The subconscious mind does not distinguish between the vivid emotionalized experience of a thing already possessed and the vivid emotionalized experience of a thing imagined as already possessed. The subconscious receives both with the same fidelity and acts upon both with the same reliability. It does not inspect the instruction for factual accuracy before receiving it. It processes what arrives with genuine emotional force. This means that the man who reads his prosperity statement with the full genuine felt experience of already being in possession of what it describes, who sees himself in the scene, inhabits it, feels its texture and its weight, and the specific quality of the life it represents is delivering to his subconscious an instruction as powerful and as actionable as the same instruction delivered by a man who actually possessed the described prosperity. The subconscious will transmute into its physical equivalent by the most direct and practical means available any order that is given to it in a state of belief or faith that the order will be carried out. Let me tell you about a man, in a condition of what appeared by every outward measure to be complete and final failure. He had no money, he had no position, he had no prospect of either that he could identify by any reasonable assessment of his circumstances. He had come to a city where he hoped to find work of some kind, and the city had received him without any special interest in his needs. He had, however, something that is worth more than money, and worth more than a position, and worth more than any favorable circumstance that a man's environment can provide. He had the understanding absorbed from his reading, rather than yet demonstrated in his conduct, that the subconscious mind given a clear instruction with genuine faith will move the man's circumstances toward the instruction, rather than waiting for the circumstances to become favorable before proceeding. He obtained permission to use a typewriter in a print shop for 1 hour. He sat down and wrote a letter to himself, a letter from the perspective of the employer he wished to attract. Addressed to the employee, he intended to be describing in precise and specific language the qualifications and the value that the employee would bring to any organization with the intelligence to engage him. He wrote it fully. He wrote it with the conviction of a man who had genuinely examined what he had to offer and found it sufficient. And in the act of writing, in the deliberate, organized, specific crystallization of his own value into language precise enough to be put on paper, something occurred in the operating condition of his mind that the writing itself had produced. When he walked out of that print shop and went to the largest and most demanding employer in the city and handed over the letter and asked for work, the bearing of the man who entered that office was not the bearing of a man who had nothing and was seeking charity. It was the bearing of a man who had something to offer and was presenting it. The prosperity consciousness genuinely inhabited in the act of writing had changed his demeanor as completely as though the circumstances themselves had changed. Before this video ends, make a decision. Keep wishing for money or start attracting it on purpose. Getting rich was never an accident. It's a mind trained to expect wealth. I've made the first step free for you. One page that reprograms your money mind. Go to secondlife.com. Download your free Get Rich Auto Suggestion Sheet and begin tonight. Don't let this be one more video you watched and forgot. Links in the description. He was hired at a salary 3 times what he had previously earned. What changed? Not his circumstances. Those were worse than they had ever been. What changed was the dominant content of his mind, produced by the specific act of writing the prosperity statement, with the full conviction of a man who believed what he was writing. And the dominant content of the mind is what every person in that office was reading, as clearly as they were reading the letter he handed them. Now I want to give you the specific elements of what the mind must be doing as it plants the prosperity instruction, because the mechanics of the planting matter as much as the consistency of the planting. What to say? The written statement of your definite desire. Read aloud with the full conviction that it is a description of a present reality rather than a future aspiration. Read it slowly. Let each element of it land in the mind with the weight it carries. The sum, the date, the service, the plan. These are not words on a page. They are the blueprint being given to the subconscious architect who will work through the night on its construction. What to see? The specific scene of the achieved prosperity, not the abstract feeling of being wealthy. The specific room, the specific morning, the specific quality of the day of the man who has arrived at what you are doing. See his face in the mirror. See the work he does. See the ease with which the things that presently require great effort are performed. Make the scene as specific and as vividly present as any memory of a thing you have actually lived. What to feel the quiet certainty of a man who has already decided. Not excitement. Excitement is the energy of a man who is not yet sure. Not urgency. Urgency is the energy of a man who is afraid the thing will not arrive. The feeling that the subconscious mind receives most effectively is the settled, patient, warm confidence of a man who has given the instruction to a mechanism he trusts and has released the outcome to that mechanism's care. The ether carries at all times vibrations of prosperity and health and success alongside the vibrations of poverty and fear and failure. Both are present. Both are available to every mind at every moment. The thought you are holding tonight, charged with the specific feeling I have described, is the signal by which your mind selects its resonant frequency from among all the vibrations the ether carries. Select the frequency of prosperity tonight. Hold it, feel it, plant it in the deepest available soil, which is precisely where you are now. Part 4. Clearing the channel. Removing what blocks the flow, guarding the gate against poverty thought. I want to speak now about the enemy of a mind prosperity consciousness, because it is not enough to plant the prosperity thought if the channel through which it must grow is simultaneously being poisoned by what the man allows to pass through it unchallenged. That enemy has a name. It is the fear of poverty, and its most dangerous feature is that it does not present itself as fear. It presents itself as realism, as the sensible acknowledgement of difficult circumstances, as the honest assessment of a man who has not allowed wishful thinking to cloud his judgment, as the sophisticated refusal to be naive about what the world is actually like. Every one of those presentations is a disguise. Beneath all of them is the same instruction being delivered to the subconscious. Poverty is your reality. Lack is what you attract. The prosperity you desire is not genuinely available to you. The subconscious receives that instruction with the same fidelity it receives every other instruction, and it acts upon it. Nature will not tolerate a vacuum. The brain was created to receive, organize, and express the power of thought. When the individual does not use it for the expression of positive, creative, abundance-directed thought, nature fills the vacancy by forcing the brain to act upon negative thought. There is no neutral position. There is no mental state of pleasant emptiness from which poverty thought is excluded. But prosperity thought has not yet arrived. The man who is not deliberately cultivating prosperity consciousness is, by the operation of this law, cultivating poverty consciousness, whether he knows it or not, whether he intends or not, whether the circumstances of his life that prompted the poverty thought were genuinely difficult or not. This is why the instruction to guard the gate, to exercise the conscious mind's prerogative of refusing entry to negative thought material before it reaches the subconscious, is not a counsel of naivety. It is a counsel of practical mechanics. The man who guards his gate is not denying that difficulties exist. He is refusing to allow difficulties to become the dominant content of the mind, because he understands that the dominant content of the mind is what the law will translate into physical circumstances. I have already mentioned the banker with his sign. Let me now describe what happens when the opposite practice is maintained. In tens of thousands of homes across this country, in my time and in every time since the law of thought was first understood, the dominant topic of daily conversation is poverty and want. The family talks about how little there is, about how the bills exceed the income, about how the economy is unfavorable, about how their neighbors seem to have more, about how the circumstances of their particular situation are uniquely and persistently difficult. And then they wonder with a genuine puzzlement. That is one of the most heartbreaking things I have encountered in 50 years of observing human beings in their relationship to prosperity. Why the circumstances never improve. They are receiving exactly what they are ordering, not from any cruelty in the law, but from the perfect impartiality of it. They are ordering poverty with the same consistency and the same emotional force with which the prosperous man orders abundance. And the law fills both orders with identical reality. One pessimist permitted to continue his influence in an organization long enough can destroy the productive work of half a dozen competent people. He does it not through any dramatic act of sabotage, but through the simple, daily, persistent act of setting adrift in the minds of those around him the thought habit of poverty and failure. Every conversation in which lack is rehearsed is an instruction delivered. Every expressed doubt about the organization's future is a seed planted. Every voice that joins the chorus adds to the weight of the instruction being sent to the subconscious minds of everyone within hearing. The guard at the gate, the conscious mind's prerogative to choose what enters the subconscious, is available to you. Nature has built man with absolute control over the material that reaches his subconscious through his 5 senses, though in the great majority of instances he does not exercise it. Examine with the honest attention of a man who intends to do something about what he finds, the conversations you have been conducting about money and prosperity. Ask of each habitual conversation, is this planting abundance thought or poverty thought? Is this directing the subconscious toward the outcome I desire or away from it? Examine the media and the commentary you have been allowing through the gate without inspection. The newspaper that fills its columns with accounts of business failure. The financial commentary that specializes in cataloging what is going wrong. The social environment that regards as wisdom the most discouraging assessment of the most difficult possibilities. All of these are delivering instructions through the channel of autosuggestion with the same mechanism by which any other repeated emotionalized thought plants itself in the subconscious. They are not information about the world you are receiving without consequence. They are instructions to your subconscious about what kind of world to produce for you. Choose what enters. Refuse the poverty thought at the gate, not through a performance of forced positivity the honest mind knows to be false, but through the steady, consistent daily practice of a man who has decided that the dominant content of his mental life will be the thought of abundance and possibility rather than the thought of scarcity and impossibility. Form the habit of thinking and talking of prosperity. Very soon, material evidence of prosperity will begin to appear in the form of wider opportunity and new and openings. This is not a promise of magic. It is the description of a law. The same law that produces poverty from poverty thought produces prosperity from prosperity thought, with the same precision and the same reliability to every man and woman who is willing to apply it sufficient consistency. Tonight, in the condition of deep receptivity in which you are receiving these words, the gate is as open as it ever is. Whatever passes through it in these minutes will be received at depth. Let only the prosperity thought pass. Let the abundance image be the instruction that the subconscious takes into the hours of work that follow the closing of your eyes. The channel is clear. The instruction is ready. The subconscious is waiting for the last thing you will give it before the night's work begins. Part 5. The law that makes it permanent. Letting the subconscious work through the night. The final instruction. We have come now to the last principle of this hour, and I want to deliver it to you in the condition in which you are presently receiving it, because this principle describes precisely what is happening in you as you listen. The law of cosmic habit force, which I have described at length in my fuller works, and which the devil himself confessed to be the mechanism through which he controls the minds of men who have not learned to use it for their own benefit, operates in this way. Nature takes whatever thought habit is presented to it consistently enough for long enough with sufficient emotional force, and makes it permanent, not persistent, permanent, fixed. The dominating thought of the mind, repeated beyond a certain threshold of consistency and feeling, enters a stage that I have called rhythm. And when it enters rhythm, it is no longer a thought that must be consciously maintained. It has been taken over by the law and converted into the automatic self-sustaining orientation of the mind, operating without effort, without daily renewal of will, as naturally and as continuously as breathing. The poverty consciousness of the drifter reaches this stage. The poverty thought repeated daily without examination or resistance passes into rhythm and becomes permanent. The man no longer chooses to think about poverty. He simply does, as automatically as the river follows its established channel, because the law has made it the permanent groove of his mind. And the money consciousness of the man I have been describing reaches this same stage. The prosperity thought, repeated daily with feeling and with faith, passes into rhythm. The law takes it over. The man no longer labors to maintain his prosperity. He simply has it permanently, self-sustaining, directing his perceptions and decisions and conduct toward prosperity with the same automatic reliability with which the drifter's poverty consciousness directs him away from it. Fortunes gravitate to men whose minds have been prepared to attract them, just as surely as water gravitates to the ocean. I want to hold that statement before you for a moment without rushing past it, because it contains the most important single truth about the relationship between the prepared mind and the accumulated fortune. The fortune does not come to the hardest working man. It does not come to the most intelligent man. It does not come to the man with the most favorable circumstances or the best timing or the most valuable connections. It comes to the man whose mind has been prepared to attract it, whose dominant thought vibrates at the frequency of the thing desired, whose subconscious has been given the instruction of abundance so consistently and with such genuine emotional force that the law has taken it over and made it the permanent orientation of his mind. This preparation is what the practice I have described in these hours accomplishes. Not instantly, not in the dramatic, sudden fashion that men who have not studied these principles sometimes expect, but consistently, reliably in days and weeks and months of daily practice, deepening with every repetition, approaching rhythm with every consistent session, until one day the man recognizes that the prosperity consciousness has become his nature, and that his circumstances have been changing in accordance with it, as naturally as the shadow follows the man who walks in sunlight. There is one more thing the subconscious requires for its most effective operation, and I want to give it to you plainly before these hours conclude: release. The man who plants the seed and then stands over it demanding that it grow faster, who plants it in the evening and digs it up in the morning to check on its progress, who plants it with genuine faith one day and undermines it with anxious scrutiny the next, is not allowing the mechanism to operate. He is interfering with it. He is using one hand to give the instruction and the other hand to express doubt that the instruction is being carried out. The sub receives both instructions, and the dominant one, the one charged with a greater emotional force, is the one it acts upon. If the doubt is more emotionally charged than the faith, the doubt is the operative instruction. If the faith is more emotionally charged than the doubt, the faith is the operative instruction. This is why the feeling I described earlier, the quiet, settled, patient certainty of a man who has given the instruction to a trust mechanism and released the outcome to that mechanism's care, is not merely a pleasant mental state. It is the specific condition in which the subconscious operates at its highest effectiveness. It is the absence of the doubt instruction that would otherwise compete with the faith instruction for the operative position. Plant tonight. Plant with feeling. Plant with the specific image and the named sum and the settled conviction of a man who has decided, and then release it to the most capable, the most persistent, and the most ceaselessly operating mechanism available to any human being, the subconscious mind, that will work through every hour of the night that follows. I want to close this hour with the description of what is happening right now, not as an aspiration toward what might happen, but as the factual account of a mechanism that is already in motion. You have been listening to these words in the condition of approaching sleep. The analytical resistance of the waking mind has been lowering throughout this hour. The gate between the surface thinking and the deeper mechanism has been gradually opening as the hour progressed. The words delivered in the last minutes of this hour are being received in the deepest, most receptive, most seed-welcoming condition of the subconscious mind's daily cycle. The prosperity thought that has been planted through these hours, the image of the stream, the mechanics of the practice, the clearing of the channel, the specific instruction to the subconscious, all of it has been entering in the condition of maximum receptivity, not as ideas to be remembered and later applied, but as seeds received at depth in ground that is ready to receive them. The subconscious is about to begin its night's work. It will work with what it has been given, and what it has been given in this hour, in this condition, through this channel that your state of approaching rest has opened wider than it would have been at any other moment of today, is the thought of abundance, the instruction of prosperity, the clear and specific and emotionally genuine image of the fortune that has been claimed. Give it now the last instruction of the night. In the quiet that follows these words, hold once more the specific picture of the prosperity you desire. Feel it as present rather than future. Speak it to the subconscious. not as a wish, but as a fact organized, prepared, and in the process of realization by the mechanism you have now set in motion, then sleep. The work continues through the night. The subconscious does not rest. The law does not rest. The channel that has been cleared and the seed that has been planted will receive the attention they require through every hour between now and the morning. And in the morning, read the statement again, and the evening after, and the morning after that. Every day, without exception, until the law of cosmic habit force takes the practice over and makes it your nature. Fortunes gravitate to men whose minds have been prepared to attract them. Tonight, your mind has been prepared. There was a man, and I will not give you his name yet, who had reached the specific condition that I am about to describe to you.